Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and it's now been reported that the US levies on imports are at their highest level since the 1930s. And those levies in the 1930s massively stoked the depression that happened at that time. Nobody thought another American government would be so stupid as to replicate those same conditions, which even at the time economists said would go badly wrong. Until, of course, people decided to elect Trump because it was becoming quite expensive to make an omelette. So is Trump risking another depression, or are there some fail-safes in place this time to prevent the dumbest president in American history repeating history with catastrophic consequences for his people? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So a couple of quotes for you. 1. We are being taken advantage of by every country in the world. We will put our workers first, our country first. We need to protect our industries. Second quote. The first duty of the statesman is to protect the American worker and the American farmer. A tariff wall is the only way to ensure our national prosperity. Now, one of those quotes is from this year, the other is from the 1930s. The specific words used tell you which is which, but language used there is almost identical in meaning. The economic policies are very similar, and it raises a fairly terrifying question. Will the outcome be the same? I mean, history doesn't repeat itself exactly, but as the saying goes, it often rhymes. Today, we're looking at the parallels between the Trump administration's tariffs and the infamous Smoot-Hawley Act of the 1930s. So we can look at the same political arguments being used today, risking a repeat of one of the most self-defeating chapters in Western economic history, shall we say. And of course, if the American economy has a bad time, the world economy fails as well. So first, let's look at the situation today. In a major break with decades of American trade policy, the Trump administration launched a series of very aggressive tariffs, changing their relationship with the global economy. The reason given was simple. We're going to protect American industries from what they called unfair foreign competition, especially from China, but from even some remote islands to some extent. Trump has been making these arguments for many decades, but the only reason this action is happening now is because he's the only man who's got the guts to take on the penguins. This America First strategy argued that high tariffs would shield American jobs and bring manufacturing back to America. And despite climb downs and chickening out, the tariffs grew wider and wider, eventually pushing the average US effective tariff rate to its highest level in nearly a century. This is a direct challenge to the global trading system that the United States helped to create after the Second World War and became the main beneficiaries of. An absolutely massive gamble to throw away an economic model that made your country the biggest and most powerful economy in the world, based entirely on the idea that America can use its economic power to force other countries to bend to its will. But this, of course, is not a new idea. We've seen it before, almost 100 years ago, under incredibly similar circumstances, not identical, however. So let's go back to the 1930s. So the world was on the brink of an economic abyss. So things were already not great, right? Just like now. The stock market had crashed, unlike now, I suppose. The global economy was already grinding to a halt. So in this climate of fear, the US government passed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It started as a very limited bill just to help American farmers. But then it ballooned in Congress. Lobbyists from pretty much every industry turned up to demand protection. So the final bill, bit of a monster, raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to the highest levels of the 20th century. The argument was exactly what we're hearing today. Protect our industries and jobs from foreign competition. And the promise was fairly straightforward. Make foreign goods more expensive so Americans will have to buy American. The problem, of course, that no one ever explains is that means Americans having to pay more for it. Because why wouldn't Americans buy those American goods in the first place? Either they don't exist, and so if you want the goods, you have to get the import. You've just made it more expensive. Or the American version is more expensive, in which case you're forcing the American consumers to spend more. It was a policy born from a nationalist vision of economic self-sufficiency, which even at the time was not grounded in reality. The actual reality turned into a bit of a nightmare. Smoot-Hawley didn't save the American economy. It didn't make America great again. It helped push the entire world much deeper into the Great Depression. And one of the most chilling parallels, really, is how at the time, see if this chimes a bell, at the time, expert advice was completely ignored. In 1930, Smoot-Hawley bill was being finalised. There were over 1,000 of the nation's top economists signed a petition begging the then President Hoover to veto it, saying this is mad, mate. This is mental. They warned it would make unemployment worse, not better. They predicted other countries would retaliate, strangling the trade that American farmers and businesses relied on. They argued it would hurt the vast majority of citizens. They were completely ignored. The political pressure was too strong. President Hoover signed the bill. Now we fast forward to now. Trump administration rolls out its own tariffs. Huge majority of economists, business groups and various other financial institutions all raise the alarm. They point directly to the Smoot-Hawley disaster as, should we not do that again? That didn't go well. And just like in the 1930s, the warnings were basically dismissed, painted as complaints from, the globalist elite who don't get it. You just don't get it. It wasn't just the policies that rhymed. The rhetoric was a near perfect match. In the 1930s, supporters of Smoot-Hawley sold it using the language of national strength and America first. It was about ending reliance on other countries and restoring pride through economic independence. Where have we heard this so many times before? The exact same playbook that's been used to justify the modern tariffs. The slogan America First framed the policy, tapped into a powerful feeling of economic nationalism. The argument was that free trade had weakened the country, that it was time to fight back. President Trump even declared that trade wars are good and easy to win, a claim that flies in the face of the lessons from the 1930s. And indeed, we can now say of 2025. The kind of rhetoric that frames trade as a zero-sum game, a battle where you've got a winner and a loser. And if you look at the other side winning, well, you must be losing. So Trump looks at it as, hang on a minute, these people are doing quite well on trade, therefore we must be doing badly on trade. It's the same thinking that led to Smoot-Hawley, where global commerce wasn't seen as a system for mutual benefit where both sides could improve their trade, but as a battle. It's an emotional message. It's one that history has shown can be economically devastating. And just as economists predicted back in 1930, the world didn't just sit there and take it. There was a reaction to Smoot-Hawley, and it was fairly fast and furious. Countries across the globe did hit back with their own measures. I mean, Canada and China are hitting back now. China forced to climb down from Trump. They hit back very hard. Canada is still trying to stabilise their trade relationship. I see today that Trump is upset that Canada will also recognise Palestine, which is just weird. Like, France announces their decision. Trump gristles a bit. UK announces the decision. Trump says, yeah, I'm not bothered. Do what you like, mate. Canada announces the decision and Trump threatens to pull the trade deal. Now, I'm pointing this out, not just because it's something that's happened today, but because it points out one important difference between now and the 1930s. Because there are some other differences, which I'll come on to, which show that maybe this won't tip us into a global depression. But there's another difference in that the current US president has no joined up thinking on anything. At the time, the US president and indeed Congress at the time just at least thought there was a sort of logic there. But not anymore, not in today. Trump has completely different reactions to exactly the same stimulus. This arguably makes things more dangerous. It makes him more unpredictable. He can't even predict his own behaviour. But anyway, back in the 1930s, the result was a tit-for-tat trade war that brought global commerce to a halt, basically. Instead of protecting American exporters, the tariffs destroyed their own foreign markets. American exports collapsed. Completely collapsed, which contributed to factory shutdowns, farm foreclosures across the country. This is precisely what began to happen after the Trump tariffs. See, as the US put duties on goods from China, Europe, everywhere, frankly, the nation started to hit back. So China actually targeted, for example, US farm products really quite hard. The European Union threatened iconic American brands. Now, the EU have never followed through on their counter tariffs because they've worked on the idea of getting some sort of deal, which they now have. But even just the threat of it creates problems for American-based businesses, because now they're not sure that they can rely on those foreign markets, because if Trump pushes them too far, they'll squeeze them. So you have this global supply chains, a really complicated set of interconnected productions, and they've been thrown into chaos this year, just like in the 1930s. The warning that protectionism invites retaliation becomes a reality. American businesses once again get caught in the crossfire. So the final verdict on the Smoot-Hawley, by the way, was that historians and economists have been basically unanimous. It was a massive failure. There was a motivation to do something. It's not like the economy was booming, but just like now, yes, we've got economic fallout from, for example, various wars around the world, Russia-Ukraine war, instability in the Middle East, for example, also dealing with post-COVID, restructuring of supply chains, because now we've decided global supply chains have vulnerabilities. So there have been economic pressures here, just like there was in 1930. But the protectionism just made it way worse. It didn't cause the Great Depression as such. What it did was throw petrol on the fire. It helped to trigger a global trade war. So it was a major factor in the collapse of international trade, which fell by about 2/3 from 1929 to 1934. So it massively deepened the depression. It prolonged the suffering it had promised to fix and expanded that suffering to way more people. So what about modern tariffs? So we're not in a depression right now. America isn't even officially in recession yet. But economic studies consistently show that the tariffs are going to reduce long-term US GDP. They're going to lower wages. They're ultimately going to cost jobs. On the smaller scale, Trump did this in his first term. He did create some jobs, but for every job he created, there were 6 lost. The costs have been passed on mostly to American consumers and businesses, of course, through higher prices, which is effectively acting as a tax on the economy. America has applied a tax on trade, something you would think it wants to encourage. Of course, the world is different today. The economy is more interconnected. So trade wars become much more mutually damaging. You've got organisations like the World Trade Organization. It's very much weakened, particularly from Trump's first term, but it still exists. The Great Depression also involved a bit of a double whammy. You also had the collapse of the banking system. That's not happening today. Whether it will, if Trump actually gets the Fed to do what he wants and massively drop interest rates at a time when it would not be wise to do so, is another matter. But for now, the banking system is strong. So the circumstances are not identical. But that core danger, protectionism, built on national fervour, leading to retaliation and economic pain, and these days diversifying markets, remains the same. The parallels are a really keen reminder that the basic laws of economics don't change. You know, the story of the Smoot-Hawley tariff is one of history's great cautionary tales. It's a story of how, you have a certain logic there, but a poor understanding of economics and a wave of nationalism, and it leads to disaster. It shows how policies meant to protect a nation actually end up isolating it and making its people poorer. You look at the 1930s next to today, the echoes are there. The call to protect industry, the dismissal of expert warnings, the nationalist rhetoric, the swift retaliation, the parallels are just there. America's not destined to repeat the 1930s. The context's a bit different. The final chapter we still don't know about yet. But history offers a very clear and painful lesson about where this path can lead. Tomorrow, Trump looks like he's going to be increasing tariffs on various countries. So the question for America here is the same one they faced nearly a century ago. Are they going to listen to the experts? Or are they going to be doomed to relive the past? And of course, if the arse falls out of the American economy, lots of countries, especially in Europe, stand to lose a major market. This is why Trump's trade war against the entire world is especially dangerous. We are not insulated. Like if he'd just focused on China, right? If he'd have focused on China, he could have brought in allies from around the world. The world economy could have adjusted in a very organised way. But he's hitting everyone at the same time. Sucking money out of the markets to throw into the black hole he just created with his one big beautiful bill. In a zero-sum game, there is a winner and a loser. In modern, intelligent trade relationships, there are two winners. With Trump's policies, everyone loses. But who's going to lose the most? But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind-the-scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.